evening, gentlemen. We are explaining deeper and deeper and more difficult, more and more abstract levels in what is called Shem Elokim and what is called the Tzimtzum. The contraction of God's light, God's capacity to conceal himself within the creation. We are in chapter 4, but coming out of chapter 3 we had a question. Our question was, how can it be that we do not see within the creation the Word of God which is constantly creating it? Because there is no aspect of the creation, there is nothing about any particular creation that exists beyond or is more than or exists apart from, aside from, the godly power which creates it. If so, then when we look at any given creation, even at an inanimate object, the table has been our consistent example. If there's been in any inanimate object, in anything that we look at, anything in the world, we should see the godly speech which is creating it. We should perceive that everything that exists is really just God's speech, God speaking it into existence. In order to explain why we don't see this, we gave the explanation of Shem Elokim. There is a God is called, God's names correspond to his actions. They correspond to what God does. And God, when he withholds himself from expression, when he withholds himself from being revealed, this is called Shem Elokim, corresponding to the trait of Gvura. He limits his chesed, his infinite kindness, in creating everything from nothing into something. He withholds his kindness and hides himself from the creation. He hides the process from the result. Shem Elokim makes that the world appears to be independent of its creator. That was until last week, is what we were explaining. Last week, and we also spoke about how Shem Elokim is as non-understandable as Shem Havaya, because it's totally united with God and it works in the way of a contradiction. Right? This is all going to come back this week, God willing. Why is it a contradiction, Shem Elokim? Because it subtracts without subtracting. It takes away without taking away. Shem Havaya is in the table. All the table is an expression of Shem Havaya. And yet, Shem Havaya we do not see in the table. So Shem Havaya is here and it's not here. It's present and it's not present. Only God could do such a thing. Only God could take it away while also leaving it. Right? It's not a process that we can understand. This is Shem Elokim, the concealment of God. Last week we went to a new level, which is really all of this is within the few words the Alter Rebbe says at the end of the chapter. It's all within the words that the Alter Rebbe says. There's a parenthesis at the end of the chapter. As I let you know last week, there is no closing bracket. There is no closing parenthesis, right? We are inside this parenthesis that doesn't end. And in this parenthesis, we added a new idea in Tzimtzum, and we began to explain what this really means. God willing, we'll explain much more fully this week. We added a new wrinkle. The wrinkle is that Tzimtzum is not a separate action of God from his revelation. Shem Elokim does not denote a separate thing that God does, apart from Shem Havaya, apart from creation, but rather Shem Elokim is, as the Alter Rebbe says, kelim, vessels. Shem Elokim is vessels. And we spoke at length about the famous metaphor of the Ramak, to which we will continue to return. It's one of the only ways to make sense of this.